What is up, everybody? This is Blue Node. I am your host, Blue Toshi, or just Blue. And with me is Donny Clutterbuck, one of my favorite people in the space. And Donny voted in a blue poll of like 6 people, the funniest person in the space in Ordinals. And to me, certainly one of the most culturally fun and relevant people in the space. So glad to have you on the show. Welcome.
What's up, man? How you doing? Is it Wednesday?
Well, it depends when we air the show live. But yes,
it is.
It's a day. So, it's funny. There's so many. Yesterday was the day of updating everybody on B25 after we had a weekend of sleep and filling people in on that. And, I think I was on Spaces yesterday, and I'm sure you were too, for like 5, 6, 7 hours. I was going
to say 8. Yeah, I was around there.
It was a long day, probably a good day, very cathartic. I'm well slept now. And you and I, before I knew we were going to be on a space together yesterday, to discuss everything in this recap, and now the good thing is it's just you and me. You and I go back from the beginning, but it's funny because I think we've always run in the same circles, but you and I have never really until this trip, kind of through Chip and through the pool and, through your awesome girlfriend and just kind of hanging out, like we've never fully connected, even though we've literally been having conversations metaphorically, like I'm facing this way, having conversations with someone, our backs are touching and you're facing that way, but we've never been like, hey, Donny, it's Blue. Good to finally hang,
I think we got to spend a little bit of time at, I said NFT NYC or maybe Nashville or something, but it was something like not much more than a year ago, the last time. Maybe it was,
I think it was Nashville or
some dudes,
maybe Miami. Oh, Miami.
House.
No, it was Miami.
It was Miami, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and then we had
once in a while.
Did you come on our did you go on the roof deck in Miami with me and the Vivid guys? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, that's got to be it. That's the joint.
Yeah, and it's funny because when Gerard and I were looking at places, there was a place that had 4 bedrooms. There was 4 of us and they each wanted a bed. And I was like, guys, you know what? I'll pay extra for the bigger bedroom because I'm old, but I'm going to pull rank here because a 1,500 square foot deck with a hot tub on it and a view of Miami, and that's I don't know what the vibe's going to be here, but that's what you want. So when we were there, we had Inscribing, obviously, which brings us all together. That was an awesome event. But then there was the party after, super fun. But as that party, as time wore on there, we all just want to hang and talk about ordinals and talk about Bitcoin and talk about life and just be calm and chill, have a beer or two or not, and just hang out,
Not at a nightclub necessarily, where it's difficult to have a casual conversation when you're screaming over. Like, music is important and alcohol is important, but I think as I age, the less important those things become for making a productive. I mean, productive is such a specific word. I don't mean maybe productive
meaningful,
like it makes meaningful. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Impactful, something like that. Like whatever I'm going to a conference for, I'm not going to be in the room with hundreds of people. I'm going to be in a small room with 2 or 3 people at a time, whether it's actually in Vegas, some of my favorite parts, and I guess this goes back to every conference, some of my favorite parts of those conferences are the cab rides, where you're at one thing with too many people
100.
And you have to leave with less than 4 people to go to the next thing. Those cab rides are always the best conversations. It's where you get to know the most about people because you're locked in, it's only those people.
Dude, that's such a great insight. It's funny at at Miami, I took a cab with for the first time with Snoop Toshi, and I kind of knew him. We had met, but you're right. A cab ride is almost like accelerating going on a trip with someone. You see their highs, you see their lows, and we had we had a 5th person on someone's lap, and I don't know who this person was. I'm not even going to say he or she, but they were kind of name dropping and being very braggadocio, and they were saying it in such a tone deaf way that we were kind of having fun throwing little riffs that was completely the darts were all landing on each other, and this person just had no idea. And I'm not saying it's fun to have fun at someone else's expense, but they were kind of
there's a lot of ways to connect.
Right. They were kind of serving up in a softball because they were just so not humble at all. And So, but you're right. But that was like with Snoop Toshi, I'm always like that cab ride. Yeah, that's such a great way to
I don't
look
know
at
when I
those.
started noticing that, but like some of my favorite things about conferences, there was this one time where one of the previous Bitcoin magazine employees, or maybe current at the time, they like their room got messed up and they didn't end up having a room, but I ended up booking a room for another person and I who didn't show up. So it was just me in this 2 bedroom. And I
Right.
happened to be in a place with this person who, like, I'd been reading their articles and sort of admiring their trolling from afar. And I got to stay in a room, like in an Airbnb in Amsterdam with him for like, I don't know, it was like 5 days or something. I got to know more about this person. This, like, I had this totally parasocial relationship with them because I had never interacted in any meaningful way. I'd never seen him in person. I think I sat like a table away from him once at the
Right.
lounge in Hong Kong or something, but like I just heard his voice. But then I got to see him as a human being because I had an empty room. His room got screwed up. So like we just happened to end up being in the same room. When we're at conference stuff together, we like never see each other. We don't talk very
Right.
much. And it's not because we don't want to talk. It's just because like he's busy. I'm doing like
Right.
it's really difficult to connect one at a time in a huge room. But if you're open to it and you take a lot of risks, like inviting people into your space, a small number of people,
Right.
or getting in a cab with almost anybody, you can really like you can get a lot out of someone in 15 minutes
Yeah,
when
and
there's nothing else to do. There's no TV.
yeah, and you create that bond. It's funny, like on this trip, it was me in a room. We got a big room at the Plazo, and it was me, Snoop Toshi, and then Rolo, who's a shroom holder, and he's the one who motivated to do the whole booth. So he literally dedicated his whole week, or at least those 3 days, like he shipped stuff in these big containers, got the booth set up, obviously had to be there the whole time. And he got other shroomies to go there too. So it was kind of a central meeting place in the expo center. But I joked when we were there because Snoop Toshi and I also, for the first couple of days, like it was almost like we were all best friends from college. And then we all were in this big city for our first job. One was a doctor, one was a lawyer, and one was a plumber or whatever. And we all had different schedules and it was kind of strange. So it's almost like more of like a sibling relationship than it is that friend relationship. But that living together creates bonds that being in an Oons Club party, be like, hey, Donny, it's Blue.
You can't do it. Yeah.
You can't do it at all. And you have those
It's one
moments.
piece of the spectrum. There's so
Yeah.
many other things. What someone does when they're like before they have coffee, what they eat for breakfast, if they eat breakfast, what's the first thing they do when they wake up? What do they do before they go to bed? Like, what's their mood like?
Right.
For a whole sine wave of bullshit throughout the day.
Well, and when you're
actually wanted to.
Oh,
Sorry,
please go ahead. Well, when you're in a
I was gonna
room with
say,
them too, you also like you said, like what are their sleep habits? Like when I'm fairly organized at home, but when I'm at a hotel, I'm just like blah. But with three of you, I have to be like blah over here, like my piles of crap, because I'm not a pile of crap guy at home, but in a hotel I am, and I clean up. Like I don't make it worse for the cleaning folks, but I create piles of dirty clothes and stuff. And I'm like, but you have to do that respectfully. But like you said, for me, that's a poker tell. Like, okay, Blue, he's pretty put together, but my God, in a hotel, he's just like, he's just an explosion.
Yeah, but then there are people who explode differently. Like it says something about a person if they don't explode into their own corner, but they just start leaving shit all over the place.
Right.
It's another little piece of micro expression that you get out of human interaction that we don't get on the internet. Like the internet, I think, is a best case scenario. Sorry, the best bad solution we have to how to communicate with people that we're geographically limited from. So like I would prefer to always be in the same room as the person I'm talking to, but since I can't, we deal with the telephone or we deal with X or video conferencing like this. Like,
or
this would be so much cooler if we were exactly like this is the best possible solution instead of me flying to you or you flying to me, which would be absurd to do that, the amount of resources it takes to do that. So we're always like living in the middle of this like half connected world. And I think that's one of my favorite things about conferences, which leads me to my next question, which I was walking around the conference and I bumped into the shroom booth. And I thought to myself, well, there's like the USD token booth. There's the weird to the moon hashtag crypto coin. And then there's like solo Satoshi miners. There's people selling Bitcoin merch. I can see where all these booths fit. And the Bitcoin Shrooms booth felt sort of like a separate, like it was also the art display, but it was not part of the art display. What was the impetus behind getting a booth? Like, what was if you had to make a mission statement out of it, was it to uh, field questions that people had about inscriptions or the op return debate or whatever? Like, what target clientele were you hoping would come by, and what sort of witches did you want to see in their mindset, or what did you want to facilitate rather? I don't even know
Yeah,
how to ask that concisely, but
no,
you know what I'm
you
saying.
did 100%. I'd have to defer to Rollo like on the deep answer, but honestly, here's how it came about. Because shrooms, it's not like we have a treasury. It's just like Inscribe Pepe's. It's just a group of people who were mostly in early and who really wanted this, loved the culture, loved the how Shroomtoshi highlighted pretty much the entire history in quite detail of Bitcoin through these kind of Nintendo style 8-bit images. And
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Rollo had never done a booth. He'd never done a conference booth ever. And he just like, the four of us started recording like the history of Bitcoin through the shrooms on a show. We've gotten through like a quarter of them, but he just got really inspired, and he was like, in our little shroom DM on X, he's like, "Hey everybody, I really want to do this. The booths are 25 grand." So yeah, you noticed it. It was like with all the hardware wallets, it was right next to Gemini's two Tesla
Right.
Cybertrucks painted orange. Like, it was not near, Dennis's whole art installation, which obviously would have made more sense, but it's kind of cool that they put them just smack dab in the middle of B25. But I think Rollo's take on it was like, Bitcoin shrooms are the history of Bitcoin. And Ski Guy came up with the great idea to do like a quiz for people, kind of saying like, "Oh yeah, like you think you're some Bitcoin maxi and you know a
Did
lot.
you get
Like,
the reference? Okay, that
how
makes
much do
sense.
you
Yeah,
know?"
that's
So
fun.
that was
Yeah.
Rollo's brainchild, and then Ski God kind of peppering on top of that. And it was really intelligent because to Rollo, I was like, dude, I wouldn't personally do it. To me, it feels like kind of wasted money. And obviously shroom holders, like Inscribe Pepe holders, like there's extra money to do fun stuff like that. It's easy to get 25 or 40 guys chipping in like 500 or 600 each. So it's a nice luxury to have, but it's not like we tapped into a treasury. It's just a bunch of guys were like, "Cool, I'm in. Let's have a central meeting place and let's
Right.
educate on shrooms." I told Roller from 4 months ago, even till we left the hotel and I was going to the airport and gave him a big hug goodbye. I'm like, dude, I was super skeptical and I was wrong. Like, his engagement there and the quiz they did, and and some people would come up and be like, "Cassacious coin, this guy," that, like, they knew the full history, and they'd win a little swag, a t-shirt or a hat or whatever. And I was really impressed. Like, would I spend the whole money myself to get shrooms elevated? No, but it's super cool that he did it. And I was like, "Would you do it again?" And he said, "I don't want to be the guy schlepping stuff. I'll be kind of like the supervisor, but I don't want to be the schlepper anymore." But he's like, "I would show up at the booth." Like, he got super energized from that. Steven and I were going around recording interviews with artists like Chip and Hardo and,
Right.
and Coldy and stuff like that. So I was already super busy, but I would always use the shroom as kind of my home base, and he was being energized from that. When I think conference and having to man a booth, I personally don't get energized. I'm like, "Oh my God, I have 5 more hours of standing on my feet." But that's
It's
me.
like bartending, but sober under extremely bright lights and in an uncomfortable booth. Yeah, I get it, because you do it. You just have to like talk whatever someone arrives. This is something I really loved about bartending until like my 21st year, and then I stopped liking it. Whenever someone walks up to you, you have to meet them wherever they are, everybody shows up in a different mood, and you have to be receptive to like multiple moods at the same time, multiple demands. Some people won't leave. Some people leave too soon. It's like there's such a string of emotions that
Huh.
come with having to serve, like putting yourself out there and being that vulnerable and having to serve so many people and so many different states of mind, that like, yeah, that could be super stressful. And I was thinking as we were talking about this, maybe there would be a cool seminar to be had, doing 30 seconds on each shroom and giving the history of Bitcoin slide by slide, like
Yeah.
getting somebody up on a seminar stage and having them just burn through all of them and like tell the story of Bitcoin using these little pixel images. That'd be kind of like I don't know, a really holistic way of
No,
getting a group of people together and like
so
digesting
you're
it.
saying live, yeah, because we're doing it on
Yeah.
video, but each one, depending on how chatty we were that week, they're from 2 minutes to 12 or 13 minutes,
Yeah, dude. I
depending.
mean, like the index, the summary, straight
Right.
up, give the 30-second story. This is because of that. And then, like, organize them in a mostly chronological or maybe ideological order, something that makes sense, and burn through them on a stage in 45 minutes. Like, get someone who's good at storytelling to get up there, click the button, and go through each one of them. I think it'd be a really cool exploration of Bitcoin's history that most ordinals people don't know. And I would bet most strong Bitcoin maximalists of any color also have no idea
Yeah,
about.
that's a
I
good.
know I don't know all the references.
Oh, dude, we were going through the show,
Not a
and
chance.
I've
Not
been
a
in
fucking
Bitcoin
chance.
since 2015, so I know. I know some of the old ones, but I thought I knew way more. I'm like, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. Like all these little minute histories. And I was studying Bitcoin back then, but clearly only certain aspects that were appealing to me. I think what was really interesting on the show yesterday, like we were talking about culture, and you're like, well, I don't know if mining's culture. Then you went on this great like soliloquy and telling these stories, and mining is so baked into our culture. Like, what is our
Yeah.
culture? But I just love, I do feel like, I don't want to say it's a responsibility, but I feel like guys like you, me, and all the friends we're making in the space, I feel like we're kind of keepers of the cultural flame, because there's so much pump and there's so much bad content out there and bad takes on X and pump this, pump that, join this, allow this, join that. But there's a group of us, and it's not like we're all pure as white. A lot of us, obviously, DGen 2, we get it. We're not naive to that. It's actually, quite frankly, on top of art and everything else, what makes the space fun. But at the end of the day, like if I had to come to you with, be like, Donny, I need you to give it to me straight here. Like, even if you were involved in a project, be like, should I do this? You'd be like, you know what, given your current situation, no. Like, but then there's those people who just come in and, we won't name names, but they're very good at extracting and marketing and hyping the shit out of stuff. And I don't know, like my heart sinks sometimes with that stuff, but I know, I don't want to say it's a necessary evil, but it's business, it's life. It is what it is.
People are going to do that. And this is like maybe third cycle thoughts. Like once you get your intro is always some like lottery ticket kind of thing. I mean, my experience anyway, every time you buy your first cryptocurrency or whatever we want to call it,
Right.
You're looking for generational wealth, and it's really short time preference, and like you buy it because you want to sell it. You can't wait to sell it. If it goes down a little, you're selling because you didn't mean for it to go down. You meant for it to go up. But the unfortunate reality is that for the most part, when someone is attracted to these things, they're attracted to them because they are at the top.
Right.
Yeah, right. So like when everyone's talking about it, and we do this with bars and restaurants too, it's human. It's built into us. We want to be in spaces like imagine you're a deer, right? And you're frolicking through the woods and you see a lake with no one drinking from it. What do you think is the deer? Lake's poison. There's a reason no one's drinking from that. So you
Oh,
continue on and you see the lake where all the zebras and giraffes and stuff, they're all like drinking from it. And you go, that's probably the one that's okay to drink from. So you're like, you do that. I think it's cooked into the back of our heads that if we see people doing stuff, we think it's safe. And we see people not doing stuff, we assume it's not safe. There are clearly varying risk tolerances that like some people are willing to do the research and be the test subjects and they go drink from the weird lake and they either die or they find superpowered water. Maybe they find superpowered water. And then later on, that's the big watering hole, but someone got there first. Odds are pretty good that your first time around, you're not going to be decoding this. So you're just going to drink from where everybody else is drinking and they're going to move on to the next pond and you're still going to be stuck there. I think you have to learn that a few, like several years in a row. And I don't know if we ever unlearn it, to be totally honest, because I think it's built into us as a survival tactic. So I've been trying to out train myself. This is the cycle where I'm training myself to do things like buy things I think are cool when no one's looking at them. Because like,
exactly.
and not because I'm a trader necessarily, but because if I want to buy one of Bar's flares at 0.035, I want to buy it way more at 0.005. Way more. Like I should want it
100%.
more when it's low than I want it when it's high, right? So I've been trying to, I didn't save money this time around. I just kept on partaking. That's my thing. I'm always like, constantly churning, looking at things, buying
Right.
them. If somebody wants it more than me, I guess I sell it. But like I'm always trying to like support, foster, bring attention to, and lift things up. And lately, I've just been looking around at how desperate everything seems, and everyone's like flooring all of their really cool art that was going for like 6x, 7x just months ago, 6 months ago, definitely a year ago, and thinking to myself, this is when I should want it. So I've just been trying to put bids down on collections and items that I think are like stellar, exciting, riveting, things I'd hang in my house, things I would even organize at Digital Art Gallery just to be able to talk to someone else about, that are being like mistreated right now, because I think everything is a bit undervalued, at least from where it might be in the future, but because of a lack of faith or understanding potentially. So I'm actually really excited that things are so ugly at the moment, because it's affording the people who are really interested in art the opportunity to buy art when they don't have the money to buy it at the top. So this is like, the marketing's not there right now because we're not all gathering around things and lifting them up and talking about them constantly. But there's so much cool shit going on that if you have a little money and you liked these things when they were $5,000 a piece, they're 500 now.
You're gonna love them. Yeah, it's funny because
you're gonna love them there.
disco,
if you don't, that's your bad, because you're gonna wait until they go higher and you're gonna buy them then.
Yeah, it's a bottom when everybody's flooring and everybody's fighting, like because they feel like the resources are drying up and they're fighting for this limited amount of pie. But it's funny because I started this show, it was called Decentraland back in the day with Disco, a guy I grew up with. That was probably 18, 19 months ago. And he was newer to the crypto space. I think he got in a couple years ago. But like you said, he bought in at Pico top and bought a bunch. He bought some Bitcoin, thank God, but he bought a bunch of shit coins too. I should say coins that were more flash in the pan.
You're not going to offend me, man.
Yeah.
I know we were saying maximalism is toxic yesterday, but I'm not entirely sure I believe that. But we can follow up with that.
Yeah. No, so he bought at the top and he was always like, yeah, it's kind of embarrassing or whatever. I'm like, dude, you stuck around and guess what? You bought at the top at 17,000. It's at 103 now. Like you
local
held.
Top. Yeah.
Yeah. You held and you felt like an ass because you got in at the top, but you were the one who was actually curious. You stuck with it and you stuck through. And a lot of our show, and you're echoing exactly. It's just like, do you want to buy something when it's right now and it's minting and you got in the allow list and, oh, you're so lucky because Donny, you're on the list and you get to buy 4 of them and it's a luxurious item? Or do you want to buy 7 months from now when the shiny object has shifted gears 13 times and nobody's focused on whatever farce collection you said or whatever piece you want? Because like you talk about not only being smart, because at some point, like, you and I aren't in the club of like, the multi-millionaires. Like, I'm just going to buy shit and tra la 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 la. Like, you got to be smart about it. And sometimes you got to sell, but make no bones, both of us over time, there's things you want to buy that you don't want to sell. Like, we're building a collection and we're building a connection to this community and to these artists like Chip and like Far and like Hardo and like Coldy and like Rare Skrill and all these guys that we know who resonate with us. But at the end of the day, what I've learned in these last 3 or 4 cycles or whatever is like, you kind of have to like be a Kool-Aid drinking idiot for a while. Maybe there's a way to skip that step, but each cycle you get smarter. Each cycle you get smarter and smarter. You get smarter each cycle though. Like each time, like I rarely feel FOMO pressure where I need to jump in. And if I do, I have like triple gut check mechanisms in place for myself, or I'll even call Disco and be like, hey, I'm really thinking of doing this. What do you think? Like, you got a buddy who's like, it'll probably be cheaper later, but sometimes it's like, ooh, you could probably flip this one, but I mean, I hate to name names, but look at Taproot Wizards. Like, everybody I talked to was like, yeah, I don't really want it. I'm going to flip. And I'm sure there's people out there who love being a part of the community, but let's be honest. A lot of people wanted to flip that. And my favorite meme was, I don't know if Snoop did or someone did it. It was gray haired guy with like straining happy face, and he's like, I came in as a flipper and became a community member, and
yeah,
I'm not picking on Taproot Wizards, right? Not picking on them, but Udi is obviously very good at, just like ZK and a couple of these guys, like whatever they touch, it, maybe Raktoshi used to have that. It just like everybody wants it. I don't know. That'd be tougher to pull off now in kind of this crabby ordinals market, but it's still, it worked for Taproot Wizards, which I was surprised about. No shade, but I was shocked.
I was not surprised they sold out, and I was not surprised that they didn't flip for a lot more, because everybody has been proving, especially over the last year in ordinals, maybe 8 months, something like that. Everyone's been proving to me that they don't want anything they have. And there will be people who want those things, and they maybe did want those things at one point. But as soon as other people don't want them, they don't want them. I was interested.
That's a great
It's enraging to me to see that a majority of what people buy is stuff that they can't wait to get rid of. And I don't think that exists in like almost any other arena. Like, people don't buy Gucci purses just to get rid of them. I mean, some people maybe do. So there's a flippers market for everything. There are people who buy a bunch of sneakers and they don't ever want to wear them. They just sell them later, or they collect them. But I've never seen a market so intent on getting out as crypto. And maybe that's because it's digital. It doesn't take up space. There's low friction to get in. There's a lot of other constraints that are kind of lifted,
right?
Namely those, I think. But like, there's so much cool shit out there that I feel like I look at the people who like can't wait to get rid of a Taproot Wizard because they just bought it for 0.2 because they wanted an extra 0.3 or something. And I'm like, do you guys not get like any of the jokes here? Like, you don't get any of the jokes. You don't get that, like, Taproot, like the word Taproot is kind of a meme in and of itself, or it has been for the last 4 years. And people, maxis are mad about Taproot. Layer 2 solutions like to lock data in unspendable Taproot output. Like, there's so many things to the word Taproot. And then the wizard thing from Reddit back in the day, and there's like 10 different kinds of wizards, and nobody wants one. And these are the first on the Bitcoin blockchain, but they're not the first in the world. And,
the Taproot wizard design is commissioned from Mavensbot. They're not even the original artists. Like, the irony, it's like the Russian nesting dolls, right? It's just like the deeper you go, and you know what I will say though, like as I did some research on Taproot Wizards, and again, I don't want to pick on them, but I was like, how does the floor with everything else is crabbing or going down stay up? And I looked, and a lot of the secondary purchases for those first 36 hours, and then I did it 2 weeks later just to look, because I was curious. It was all
fresh
from
wallets
that were brand new, that only held Taproot Wizards. And, you draw your own conclusions. But for me...
That's bullish. I'm excited. I can think of a much worse scenario. Let's say Udi and the team are buying Taproot Wizard back, right? Let's say that they're filling a treasury that they didn't withhold or something like that.
Right.
Cool. If they want the Wizards back, they can have the Wizards. I don't care who buys them at that point. If they don't buy them back, because they're giving people an exit. Like, anybody who bought one at 0.1 Bitcoin, like, they can flip it for 0.7 Bitcoin, and the Taproot Wizards are like, "We'll give you the money. Go nuts."
Well, they're not getting if that's what's happening. 0.7. Maybe a couple of those rares did, but I think.
I mean, 0.07 profit. If they spent 0.1 and they're selling for 0.17 or something like that, like, good on them. If the Wizards want to buy that, then that's their money to do it with. I've never looked down upon that happening.
So you don't think propping the floor hypothetically is the worst thing, because it creates almost more buyer protections. If they have deep pockets, that's just safer for you. So it's not, because I mean, if those wallets didn't exist, it would probably have been a very free-for-all drop in those first 7 days.
Or if it might have been really ugly, and it might have floored down to 0.005. Who knows where it would have gone? And It doesn't matter to me. I would have just bought more if that's the case, because I actually do want them. It also, like, I don't know what the Taproot Wizards are doing. I don't know if they're planning an ICO or building a public company, or a company that's going to go public. I have no idea what they're doing in the background, if anything, that would lead them to want to accumulate their own assets in that way, whether it's cats or wizards, or if those will be the beacons for some kind of goofy airdrop in the future. Like, I don't know. I think there are a lot of reasons to not doubt people who are polarizing, loud public figures who are also brilliant. And I'm not going to be the person who thinks he's going to outsmart Udi, because Udi's been around this space, not just like the Bitcoin space and not just the Ethereum space, but like the Ordinal space since like day one. and every other space since forever. So like there's very few people who have like a bird's eye view in the way that he does, like him or not, the way that he interacts. I mean, that's unimportant as far as I'm concerned. He
So you
is
don't hook into the drama at all. You don't hook into like the
no,
FUD and the
I don't care.
FOMO and the shit posting.
Nah. I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. In fact, if anything, it's a mute filter for me. I see people constantly ganging up on one thing or talking too well about one thing and not just having like reasonable, thought-provoking conversation.
Yeah, and you make a good point because like one man's, it's like Luke Dash Jr. One man's spam is another man's treasure. But I will say,
Yeah.
like I met a new friend at in Vegas, and he was debating whether to come. Last second, he came, and he went to that Taproot Wizard party. I did not, but I saw him later, and like I said, he's going through rocky time in his personal life, and he had on that wizard cap and cape, and you know what? He was a kid again, and I was like, who am I to say like buy this, don't buy real art, buy only generative art, like and stuff like that. He was having at the time of his life. He was a kid again, and when I went back in the casino, I saw around a craps table there was like 20 of them. This is like 1-2 in the morning, whatever night that was, and it was all hats, and I was like, you know what?
Yeah, dude.
I was like, Blue, maybe you need to like get off your old man, get off my lawn rocking chair, and just,
no one has to do.
They were having a good time.
They don't want to do. Yeah, dude. You don't have to buy anything you don't want. If you think the wizards are stupid or if Udi's a dick on the internet, I totally get that, and nobody has to like any of it. But the thing I think is gross is when people buy it despite hating it, not being able to contain how badly they want to sell it, and then when they can't sell it to someone, they blame the founder. Like, why did you buy it to begin? Let's just don't do it. Also,
that's a very good point.
Ruled. The party was so cool. It was one of the best parties I think I've ever been to, and I'm
was
not
it super
being
fun?
hyperbolic. I had so much fun at that party. So, tidbit, me and my girlfriend were talking about the last Taproot Wizards party. Maybe it was in like Paris. I think it was NFT Paris, like one of the last parties. And I wanted to go, but I was tired, jet lagged. I can't stand out in the cold for an hour. Like there were too many things fighting against me.
Right.
And we looked at pictures of it, and it was like adults wearing sparkly wizard caps and capes. And my girlfriend was like, I don't want to be in a room full of 50-year-olds behaving like teenagers. That's stupid.
Right.
So this time we got dressed up in disco outfits. Like I don't even think it was a disco party. It was just at disco show, but we got dressed up in disco outfits and we went to the party. And I think I had more fun at that party than I've ever had anywhere doing anything. It was incredible. The whole walkway into the place was like painted with neon ultraviolet light glowing cats, and it was like did you go to disco show at all?
Are we talking at Illuminarium,
the venue? No, it was the venue that the Wizards party was.
No, I did not make it over there at all.
Dude, it was really cool. There was this like strange series of tunnels that you have to get into the club via, like you have to go upstairs and around a corner and stuff, and all of those walls had ultraviolet glowing paint on them with quantum cats going up, and there was like shit all over the place and goofy little knickknacks. And you get into this place that's like a big dive bar, and there's no sign of wizardry really in the dive bar,
right,
except that everybody's wearing a hat and a cape. And then there's this secret door that you push through that just, it kind of looks like you're going out into the hallway, but instead you go into this glowing illuminated floor disco dance room with like an elevated DJ. And there was all these really cool wizard animations going on the walls and the floors, and it was like moving with the music. It was nuts, man.
So they went for it, and
I don't know if that's utility, but
no, I mean that's it's super cool. It's like, I mean, obviously you're spending 20-30 grand for that, so if I put it in dollar terms, like, it sounds crazy.
I would have spent that without the parties though, because I'm not a party guy, so I didn't buy it for the parties.
But you had a blast though, and it like I said, fun. This guy who's been having a rough time, he's never been to a conference, so he made all these connections. Like, I know
you don't have to be a holder go to those things either. So like, this isn't a Taproot Wizard chill space. I'm not trying to do that.
No.
But
I'm
there's
glad
been an unreasonable amount of hate.
No, and I'm glad you did. And I temper my, like, I don't like to go on the timeline and be negative. There's too much of that. And I feel like this space, you can burn out so fast in the space. That's why I love to have guys like you on the show, because like, I'm definitely a lean more, not a hate on, but just like, it just felt to me in the space, and I don't even know who I'm disappointed with, but it's like, the cycle repeats where there's these certain collections that everybody, I mean, that's a lot to go in for a 0.1 for the cats or whatever, and then entangle them and then go 0.2 for the wizard. And I'm like, God, that's so many cyber seas. That's so many fars. That's so much like art.
Yeah.
But then again,
it is.
Who am I to say what you're going to collect? And, I think if you take Maslow's hierarchy, being a part of the group, like if a lot of people, I think at first it's like, some want to just flip it. Obviously, like I said, newer people in the space, they're trying to make their like turn 0.1, 0.2 into a 0.7 or 0.8, or maybe into a full Bitcoin, like, and make money in this space. It's not easy, but it, you and I both know it can be done. I had my big Moonbirds win where I just got on the allow list, sold it the next day. And,
right.
I didn't realize
now is not the time for that, but we don't know when the time for that is. And it could be now, like every day it could be the time where everybody decides all at the same time to ape into. We never know when that time's going to be.
100%.
But like, I have no problem with people trying to flip their way up to stuff. I don't judge people for anything that they do unless they buy something that they're unfamiliar with from a different ecosystem. Like if you're an ETH NFT person and you're like really big into pudgy penguins and like, I don't know,
Azuki,
whatever. You're a soul person, you like Azuki, sure, and you have like Claynosaurus and stuff. And you have never looked into ordinals at all. And you just bought a Taproot Wizard for $20,000 and weren't able to flip it, who do you have to blame?
Yeah.
Seriously, like what when you whine about something like that on the internet, you just make yourself look dumb. So a lot of those influencers who are whining about the price of Taproot Wizards, I'm like, first of all, you guys are setting the floor. There's nobody else. There's no market. There is no the market. There's us. We are the people who have the assets.
You either collectively hold or you don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're blaming everyone else for wanting to sell it, but all you wanted to do is sell it too. So like you're just making yourself look dumb.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
And you're a grown ass man. And if you can drop 20 grand on a JPEG, you're probably an accredited investor. Like you're probably have done something well in business or been somewhat street smart somewhere.
Worked.
And yeah, to blame, and it's funny, like I said, when you're at local bottoms, and I think we probably hit it a couple weeks ago, but in ordinals, that is obviously not in Bitcoin, but you're at local bottoms when everybody's flooring and everybody's fighting. And, obviously with the whole, the luxury, whatever those luxury NFTs were, like there was so many blowouts that were happening. Like the drama was just, I literally had to just like unplug for a week because I can't go there. These are a lot of people that we've known at conferences. They're nice people. And I think
I don't engage. Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. No way. I'm not getting into that.
Well, right. Because like let's take Bugsy, for example. Like a lot of people are like, Bugsy, you just FUD, you FUD. And you meet him in real life. The guy, he's one of the smartest guys in the space. Yeah, he definitely has a critical eye to things. But you know what? Like you said, you can always unmute him. You can always disagree with him. He'll have a conversation with you. Like, to me, I like people like that. I know where he's coming from. And I think having some people be a temperature check in the space, like, I would never unmute someone like that because that's healthy. Now, guys like Businessman,
I don't mute people I disagree with. Yeah. I mute people who are unproductive.
Right.
It's a different thing altogether. If people are doing stuff just to get other people riled up and angry and clicks and like engagement farming, that's a big no-no for me. But Bugsy's not doing that. Bugsy does enjoy, I think, I can't speak for him. I'm not Bugsy. No. But Bugsy enjoys getting people thinking about those kinds of things, but he doesn't do it he's not like monetizing his Twitter account.
Right. He stirs the pot, but he's not attacking anyone. He's calling out whatever event is what it is. Now, I would argue, and this doesn't need to be a bitch session, but businessman.eth, it's funny. One could be like from a distance, he does the same thing, but I would say he's also right sometimes, but he makes it way more personal and it doesn't feel quite as good. You know what I mean?
He finally came after me. Like he usually leaves me alone. He finally came after me when I bought that 1-of-1 Airhead right before the Airhead mint started. I bought it for 0.08. And that's on Flex. I was looking at, I had a Node Monkey. It was a floor Node Monkey and I could sell it for 0.1 that day. And I thought to myself, do I want the single worst piece of this already existing collection that I don't really vibe with that much? Or do I want the single coolest piece in this other thing that's trying to push the boundaries of like meta protocol usage on Bitcoin? Like it was just a logical decision. I'd buy it. And he like starts commenting about what a doofus I am and what a stupid, poor piece of shit. And I'm like, the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, I didn't, what did I do to you? Why are you like attacking my character because I bought something I like? And I'm like, get out of here, get the fuck out of here. So yeah, there is muting someone because you think they are detrimental to the space by whatever you see. And then there's like a wanting to engage with people with whom you disagree because both of you can learn from it, potentially anyway. And that's, I like that. I don't mind polarization as long as it's in the name of like exploration and uncovering new things and progressing the industry. And I feel like there are some people who do that and other people who just really their goal is like, when you're playing, I don't know, like Candy Crush or something, the only goal you have is more gems or more
Right.
of whatever
Right.
currency is in the game, right? Like that's the
Right.
singular only goal. I think there are a lot of people who are motivated solely by money. They only think about money and in terms of it could be US dollars or Bitcoin. And their only goal is to accumulate more of it. And it doesn't matter if they're being honest, dishonest, progressive, not, they're looking for money. And I don't think that's wrong. I don't think they're bad. I just don't care. I don't care at all. So that's who gets muted in my eyes. Again, not to make it a bitch sesh, but
No, no, I don't
the
think it
point of this
was.
was just,
No, but
yeah, yeah.
we're going. We're, to me, this is peeling the layers of what the culture actually is. Stephen Miller and I were just talking before, and I think these kind of conversations are important because we're not afraid to go anywhere, but we're also like you just helped give me more perspective on Taproot Wizards because sometimes I do get like, why are you all minting this? And I like your philosophy. You're like, it doesn't matter. Like there could be 100 reasons. It's kind of like you bought the Airhead. It's like businessman, like it doesn't matter what you think because I have, if you want to talk about it, I have 23 reasons why I did it. It was actually kind of a strategic move, vibing with one, kind of going where maybe alkanes are going, or kind of going where this oil wallet's going. It's kind of interesting. I think this one, you and I both know, like everything, like it used to be like 6 weeks, everything got to be the new shiny object. Now you got like 10 days, like Odin Fun, like it was the shiny thing for 10 days.
Like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
10 days is insanely long.
No, but I
think
mean,
that's
even
way
like,
too long.
because Odin Fun, like actually, I mean, the ones that actually get legs. Most things are literally like day. It's just that it's the new news cycle that, you and I are old enough
If you
to
zoom
remember
out,
the old news cycle that was way slower. Now everything is so fast and it doesn't allow thinking or reasoning to come in. It's just, it sucks you into FOMO. And that's what it takes guys like you and I and people out there 3 cycles to figure out. You realize like,
right.
Wait, I need to be the antithesis of FOMO. And if I miss out on one, like the next CryptoPunks, like, yeah, I'd be bummed, but it might happen. But I'd rather buy things that I want. Like Eternal Tides for me, one of Vivid's piece, it was a 101. It changes with the blockchain. It's like waves going from these guys called Phenomena Labs out of like Israel. They are awesome.
Yeah,
And that was the first piece I bought where I was like, you know what? Now, after all this, like I've bought a lot of things that I love. Like I only listen to music that I like. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, that's fine. I've always been that way my whole life. Like I was never told what to listen to. I just would find like, oh, track 10 and 11 on Led Zeppelin Physical Graffiti. Those are my favorite songs. And with art, I was kind of like that. But with art, I'm reading the $12 million Stuffed Shark right now about the real art scene. And so much of that is so gross. It's all FOMO. It's like, hey, what did Saatchi have in his collection? What did the founder of Chase Bank have in his collection? And what did Christie's?
What's the smart money doing?
Right. And you and I are lucky enough in this digital space to be early enough that now we're in this new place where, like you said, I got a FAR for 0.005. I was thrilled. I wanted one before. It was a little higher than I wanted to spend at the time, or whatever the reason was, I didn't get it then. But now you and I are, I don't want to say like going to a thrift store and bargain shopping for clothes that are awesome.
What it feels like.
Yeah, but you're picking things that might be long-term grails in the Donny collection once we have our awesome Ordinals 3D space where we're all in it and you and I are talking in there and I'm walking around your art collection. Like there's things that I would like to keep forever and pass down or have for decades and decades, and there's things that,
and a lot of those things are the contentious items too, and not because they're contentious, but maybe they're contentious because they're saying something people are like unfamiliar with or uncomfortable with at the time, potentially. I also think that we don't zoom out enough. When you said it's too fast, it is too fast, in that people scramble to get whitelist. They don't really know what's going on. They scramble to sell it after that, or they're trying to, hoping there's secondary demand. And after that, I mean, every chart basically looks the same. It starts up here and then it goes whoop, 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 and it goes down here, and then it kind of like slopes off. And if we're lucky, or if they said something worth hearing, it goes back up eventually. Like someone wants it again. Not that the chart goes up, but like people want them, right? So I think a lot of the things that we're seeing do this right now, we just haven't zoomed out far enough yet. If the Taproot Wizards were to have launched a year and a half ago, or during the runes craze, they could have like promised to make a rune, and these things would have been selling for a Bitcoin. They probably would have minted for 0.8, like no doubt about it, right?
I think
you could have gotten a lot more money.
I think it's a very safe bet. Yeah, I mean, because what were inscribed Pepes were one. Lil Pepos or Pepos, I know I always pronounce it wrong, which I still love, by the way. Was that 0.12? Like, and obviously that was a $20,000 Bitcoin. So it's a whole different cost analysis than it is now. But
it doesn't mean that they're going to go back up. But zooming out far enough, like if we go next cycle, because regular old DeGods minted in October of 2021, and they were like $1,000 per until March of 2022. Yeah. So they were about $1,000 from the moment they minted at the almost peak cycle, and they were $1,000 for 6 months. And then all of a sudden they rocketed to 20,000 in March or April of 2022 on the back end of the cycle. Right. So if we're thinking about how wealth is created and where wealth is distributed, none of what's happened so far is a really good indicator of what people actually think is a long-term good store of value, because we haven't been post-peak yet. So we haven't seen new wealth created, and we haven't seen new people have to deal with how they're going to store wealth into the next 2 cycles, 1 cycle, year, whatever. I mean, maybe we have a little bit of that because we had this like post-bear ordinals boom because it was a new thing at the time, but we have not seen like a real Bitcoin euphoria or a real altcoin euphoria, which means that we haven't seen a collectibles move at all. Art ran after, like, how last time there were 2 peaks, it was a double top.
Right.
After the first peak, ETH art started to run. And then after the second peak, Solana NFTs went berserk and everything. I don't know. There's a lot of other things that happened throughout that.
That's so
But
true.
neither of those things would have happened if there wasn't a macro market peak or a macro. Can you say macro about the crypto market? Whatever. If there wasn't like a Bitcoin blow off top sort of thing, which there wasn't, but like there were tops, right? People made money.
Right.
People have to make money to be able to spend money on this stuff. And I think this was just sort of like the whole Ordinals ecosystem was born into this like nebulous no time where nothing else was happening. So of course we're not seeing things do what we think they ought to do, but I think that's not too far away. And digital assets and like fun collectibles on Bitcoin seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm obsessed with it, and I'm not obsessed with it because I want to dump it all. I just think it's really cool.
Yeah, no.
And it helped me learn about Bitcoin,
It's such a good point. I forgot about that because Ordinal started super hot, like around, the shrooms. Obviously, those weren't distributed for another year or two, but the Ordinal punks, the Inscribed Pepes, and, a lot of Raktoshi stuff. And then we had that cooling off period. And you're right. That was a hot summer it went back to really on-chain ETH art. And, I know Casey was kind of retooling, rebooting, but then we had a huge Ordinals uptick at the end of that year as well. And those were both of our double tops, peaking obviously at the halvening, right? But now we know in hindsight right before it. And then all the air that got let out of that. And, the cool thing too is like when we went to Miami, like, hanging out with you and just meeting Snoop and like each conference I go to, I make new, like, be like, oh, cool. Like I completely vibe with this person. Like that's a new person in my little inner trusty circle. We wouldn't get that if Ordinals had just meteorically taken off. We all would have been like, because when things are hockey stick up, every trade you make is a positive, super
you can't lose.
Profitable trade. So you think I'm the smartest guy in the room when no, you just were in the right place at the right time with everybody else. Right now is when you have to tighten the belt and be smart. But this is also like when our core group, when our core group comes together.
I got a phone call was my camera sideways there for a minute?
For a second, you're totally good.
Okay, cool. Good. Yeah, sorry.
You're totally good. So yeah, it's to me, my only point is like, we're still a small group. I'm not in the camp of trying to rush Ordinals to fruition to being the biggest thing ever, because I'm really enjoying, like, I don't know if it was super big, like you'd be super successful over here, I'd be successful over here because we were so early, Chip would be over here. And I don't think I would have had the chance because of a smaller group to really get to know you guys. And you and I ran in the same sub 1K, sub 10K circles with Inscribed Pepe's, and you and I never even connected because even then there was so many of us. So it's just crazy to me to see, but also I'm patient.
Consolidation.
It's a long game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is necessary for anything to build a foundation of any importance. I think everything has to consolidate. Like even a relationship, you could say that like relationships go through phases where you're dating, like you meet, you're dating, you think about the person all the time. This is the spike at the beginning of the chart, right? You can't stop thinking about them. You want to learn more stuff about them. And eventually it hits a peak and you go on a few more dates and you have to start making exceptions. They chew their mouth open. They have a funny laugh. They fart in their sleep, whatever they do. And then there's a long consolidation period where you're just kind of like living together and still exploring each other, but without all the like firework craziness, because you can't do that forever. Nothing can do that forever.
No.
So I think it's really cool. Even like the formation of a galaxy or a planet or something, it always starts in this like fiery spiral mess that eventually consolidates into something more stable. And then it sits there and it becomes whatever it's going to be until its eventual destruction or whatever. Maybe that's a bad example because there's destruction inherent at the end of it. But I think you get what I'm saying, man. I think this consolidation is necessary. The people who are selling now were going to anyway. It's not like they were long-term participants.
Right.
And whatever's left behind after this like pruning and tree trimming is going to be a really strong foundation. I think we're at it right now. That's why everybody's fighting.
Yeah, and everybody's just fighting.
Like, why are
you
still here?
You know, and people like Farouk just posted, he's like, Ordinals, it was the stupidest thing ever. And you know, like those guys are cool. Kind of like Udi. They're professional shit posters. And like you said, you can hook into it or not, but it doesn't matter.
He just wanted to flip everything. Farouk wouldn't know. And I don't mean any ill towards the guy, but how would he know if he's buying the bottom or top if he's never looked into Ordinals until someone told him to buy a Taproot Wizard? I've never seen the dude in a Discord server. I've never seen him partake in a conversation about Ordinals, maybe once or twice on his show. He's the bait. He's not the shark. The sharks are the people you don't know on the outside who are like dominating the internal structure of Ordinals, you know? And I'm not saying that I'm one of those people because I'm not. I'm just like a guy who really likes being here. But it just seems unfair. And I don't mean that anybody has to be fair. I'm not saying this is like a moral judgment.
Right.
It seems like a failed premise to think that because you didn't sell Ordinals for more, get fully out with more Bitcoin, that somehow Ordinals were a mistake. Not that maybe you navigated something improperly, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, that's stuff like again, at the bottom we floor and we fight. And with you, like just like you, sometimes if I'm caught in the wrong mode or something, I might hook into it, but usually I don't. And I always find myself way more adjusted and happier. And
I'm not commenting on that shit anymore.
Yeah. And the more you mute out the noise, the more you find, like you just found there's always a far piece you always wanted and you got it. Yeah. So I guess let's do a little palette cleanse refresher. Like I kind of wanted to go early days with you. Like I said, we were like back to back in these, even in these same discords and these, you know, there's probably only 100, 200 of us in these.
Can I make a final note on the thing we were just talking about? Like a real quick final
one.
Go. The thing that I've been focusing on recently with Twitter, because this feels more productive, is you know how there are those there's a lot of them, really noisy people who hate JPEGs and everything's a scam and they're like laser-eyed. You know, they have the laser eye PFP and they're commenting on Ordinal stuff and being like, Bitcoiner scammer, blah, blah, blah. I've been trying to humanize those people lately in my head because I know that they're coming from a place where they think they're doing the right thing. And I'm coming from a place where I think I'm doing the right thing. But those two things are at odds. But it doesn't mean that we can't get along or be friends or have polite discourse or at least some sort of fruitful discourse. So anytime somebody comments on my stuff like that, I just respond with like a hug or like a emoji of like a dog with a tear on its face or something. And then I come back and I'm trying to get them to follow me. I follow them. I start liking their posts. Like I want to know what makes them tick because we're both Bitcoiners, but they think my version of Bitcoining is going to destroy Bitcoin. And I think their version of Bitcoin maybe is limited or obsolete at this point. Not obsolete, but limited or limiting. It doesn't mean that we can't be homies. So I'm trying to be homies with all these maxis who like our community has been trained to hate, because they've been seeing us through, I think, a distorted lens that maybe isn't true. Maybe they do hate us. Maybe we'll find that out. but I've been trying to like buddy up with them. So I wanted to end the Twitter domination conversation with that. I've been trying to productively interact with people who previously I tried to avoid because I thought that we would
Right.
never understand each other. I think we can.
Yeah, I actually had a
So that's
really,
it.
I 100% agree with you. I had a really interesting interaction with Luke Dash Jr. And kind of like you said, I didn't do the visual hug or anything, but I'm like, the guy's a human. He's got a point of view. And they were having a spam conversation, or someone might have even hooked on and from that group to what I said. And I don't come back at people hard. I just say like, I hear what they're saying, like, oh, that's interesting what you're saying. Like, and I'll dig deeper on their side of it. And then Luke Dash Jr. actually got involved. And I always took the high road, always took the, you know, I didn't attack, and there actually was somewhat of a fruitful conversation. And I think my conclusion from that was like, you know, the person who wrote the original article, they defined the whole thing by saying, it was almost like they were trying to prove this long point. So they wrote this long tweet, and the first line is like, JPEGs and any code outside of Bitcoin transactions is spam. I said, if you're setting up as the thesis and that's you're putting the conclusion as the first sentence, of course everything's going to cascade. You have an erroneous, or you have a judgment on calling it spam. Spam is a negative connotation. So you're not capable of a real conversation as to why maybe it couldn't be spam. Now, if they said this is clogging the network and it's not making Bitcoin transactions for the marginalized and the people who have inflating currencies, it makes a transaction too expensive for them. Like, that's a starting comment that, you know, that's one of their supporting theses, but they just started, it's spam. And by default, you're basically saying like, Donny, I'll have a debate with you, you know, but my thesis is you're a total douchebag. You're like, well, there's nowhere to go from there, you know?
I think so. We were born into Bitcoin with this like utopian view that it was going to change the way that people interact with money, like across the world, and everyone was going to be able to use it. And I think that might be a bit of a failed idea, because if everyone were using Bitcoin, it would be unobtainable for everyone.
Right.
Like if it was all the marginalized communities who have hyperinflated currencies and no access to like reliable banks or whatever, I don't know if Bitcoin is their ultimate use case, because Bitcoin isn't there to target whoever Bitcoin thinks needs it the most. Bitcoin is not the arbiter of justice. It's just a facilitator of transactions. It's fully neutral. So if Ordinals people want to pay the most for transactions, and those are valid Bitcoin transactions, and miners mine them, it's definitionally not spam.
Right.
It's not like if you right. think that this is how religious sects and zealot factions are born. Like, how many different versions of Catholicism or Christianity have you heard of, right? That's because everybody reads this book right. that they don't know the author of, and they see different things in it. You know, so some people focus on the peer-to-peer cash system line, and they're like, this is what that is. It does not include art. They don't say anything about NFTs, so it's right. wrong. It's not supposed to be right. in Bitcoin because it's not in the Bible. But then there's this other zealot faction, the Ordinals people, who made a meta protocol and bent the rules, just like are operating within the rules of the system. And older factions of this very same religion are now saying that that's not the religion that they support. So it's like bound to happen, but I think we have to change our view of what Bitcoin is. And I think viewing it as a neutral arbiter that just takes transactions and facilitates them and no one can stop them, that's like, what else are we pointing at? What else do we want? If transactions are censorable, then we have to make a different Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's not what we thought it was. You know, like the whole thing just seems so absurd. I know that I'm like, I think I have the solution to it, and which means I probably don't, right? If you're overconfident about you thinking the simplicity of the argument doesn't warrant all the conversation that's happening, and like you're the only one who gets it, then you probably don't, and I probably don't. But like, I don't see it. I don't see where all the bad is. I don't see where the damage is. There are limits to the amount that the blockchain can expand. There are clear ways that we can make it more efficient. It's just like, the fuck are we still talking about?
Well,
But again, I think it's the new major religion,
yeah, and
of the world.
the religion analogy is a good one, but you're assuming that everyone too is a rational actor. Like in our conversation
Yeah, that's a good
yesterday,
point.
yeah, in your conversation yesterday, I love that we all just talked about like, how you get into Bitcoin and whether it's mining or whether it's art, but like it's just cool because it's almost like a multifaceted diamond. No matter what facet you're looking from art, you're also learning about the Bitcoin network. And you're like I said, I've been studying it for 10 years and I still, I'm not a coder by default, but I own a coding company and in real life. And every facet you look at it at mining, traders, degens, is another facet of just kind of like life and humanity. And to me, it's fascinating. And I haven't gotten sick of it yet. And I'm surprised, but it's like, I don't know if it's the onion analogy where the more you peel, it's just like, the smaller the little pieces get and the more you peel and it just keeps going, but it's to me, it's fascinating because it has so many mirrors and parallels to culture and us. And I guess the only other thing I would say
it is us.
Right. And think about you and I and everyone we know. Think about what we've sped run. Not that like we're pro traders, but we know like all this FOMO we're talking about and making, I don't want to say counterintuitive, but like not hooking into the FUD FOMO cycles and really making your own decisions and having that confidence like that. Most people don't get that in a lifetime. Let's say you and I had our little jobs and we have our little 401ks and we invested it ourselves. Like learning that stuff can take a lifetime, like not trying to time stuff because we're not going to beat the high frequency traders. We're not going to beat the hedge fund super billionaire macho guys. So we have to be medium to long-term guys, but it teaches you about that. I learned about art there. My mom was an art historian and I never even I always enjoyed art, but I never got into it. And I literally through a technology fell ass backwards into it 8 years or 7 years after I got into the original technology where I'm like, number go up, number go down, sad, number go up. Yeah. And now it to me, I feel, I don't know, I'm well-rounded, but so many of the lessons we've sped run what money means. We've sped run so many things. And now I just feel like we've exponentially learned. And I look at, we're crossing the chasm to mainstream now. And I'm like if someone was like, should I buy Bitcoin? And you're almost like, where do I even begin? Like the answer is yes to dollar cost
the
average.
Cab rides, dude.
Right.
Yeah, the cab rides in Vegas. A lot of the because they would ask us like, "What are we doing? Why are we getting picked up at this weird tiger mansion? Like, what are you guys doing here?" And they'd say like, "Well, I have $1,000 and I'm trying to like retire. Like, where do I put it?" I'm like, I can't tell you that, dude. If you put it there in Bitcoin and come back in 10 years, like odds are pretty good it'll go up, but it could go to zero, like everything else could. There's no really good way to. Like if it took 2 years of obsessing for me to get to the point where, or 2.5 years, I guess, of obsessing over Bitcoin, for me to get to the point where I like understand Sparrow, can manage multiple kinds of wallets and seed phrase storage so far anyway, and I have a firm grip on like many different kinds of generative art, etc. That's 2 years. You can't like summarize that and fold it up into a box and give it to someone. Like it's not. We want to be able to just transmit information like Neo in the Matrix and just plug people in and be like, here's everything I've learned. Get it over with. Now you can start where I have. But I think it takes much longer than that. And I think it's good. I think it's a good thing that we can't do that because we could very quickly and easily disperse all detrimental information by accident and completely destroy ourselves as a species in like years if we didn't have these fail safes, these like generational hesitances that we have. Like if my mom wasn't still hesitant about Bitcoin, there probably would be something bad if everybody just got in at the same time, bought the top, also at the bottom, like then all the wealth in the world goes to one person. You know what I mean? Like it's good that we're taking our time with this. It's good that we're consolidating. I think we're in a really good spot.
Yeah. I had a couple clients who wanted to like they're like, hey, you're into crypto and whatever, you made a lot of money, like, and these guys have done okay. They're these medium-sized business owners that I work with, and they're like, I want you to invest for me. And I was like all excited at first, and then very quickly, like I woke up the next morning, I'm like, there
I
is
can't do that.
no way. Like that's why I'm not like a money manager or stockbroker, because I'm not going to look Donny in the face, be like, hey, like, hey, Blue, we're expecting a baby and we really want to save. I'd be like, that to me, that's too much weight. I think everybody, I personally, my dad taught me this. Everybody needs to just figure out their own risk tolerance and investment strategy. The only thing I tell people is dollar cost average in, keep it small at first, and just start learning about it, because then
that's what I said to the cab driver.
Yeah.
I didn't even say start learning about it. I said, any money you think you can burn and not notice missing, just buy Bitcoin with it and look at it in 10 years. If you need to, or if you buy a house, or you have a surgery that's upcoming that's going to cost you a lot out of pocket,
Yeah.
Like people who say, can you invest money for me? They want money in like months, days, weeks, not years. And realistically, in order to do this in a way that doesn't consume your entire life and isn't like day trading stuff, leverage trading, you just have to put it somewhere and forget it's there and move on with your life.
Well, yeah, and look at
stare at it all day.
It's a mirror of the X timeline. Again, we go right back to people are looking for alpha. Like they're looking outside themselves for what this answer is. And, what frustrates me sometimes is like, obviously this show that you and I are doing right now, like we're being 100% candid, 100% honest, hopefully somewhat entertaining, but we're not pumping anything. We're not telling them to buy this, that, or this ordinal. We're not sponsored by anybody. We're just on a journey, and we're being honest. But guess what? Like the algorithm is not, the X algorithm isn't geared for that. It's geared for sensationalism. It's geared for too extreme, obviously Republicans, Democrats, like that's the extreme case, like extreme on both sides are fighting. The rest of us in the middle who just don't care about politics are like, God, everybody mute, you just mute them. But like, now that
end every show with buy my bags.
Yeah,
I'm Blue Toshi. Thanks for listening. Buy my bags. Have a great day.
Right.
Then you don't have to, maybe it'll pump the algorithm.
Yeah, I just scroll through my own bags and be like, hey, just buy these things, everybody, and not financial
Only
advice.
The things you have listed. That would actually be a really fun segment. Like if we get a bunch of people together and we scroll through only the things that they have listed at that time, why they have them listed there and why someone else should buy it from them. I think that'd be a really fun chill show, actually.
Yeah, like you have to you either have to be super inauthentic and be like, oh no, it's great, I'm just looking for liquidity right now to do something.
Yeah, everybody's just looking for liquidity right now. That's my favorite, when somebody comes into a Discord server to like show that they have something listed and they're like, I hate to sell this, but I need liquidity right now. And I'm like, you're just saying you don't want it. And that's okay. You can say you don't have to want it. Just everybody else is allowed to not want it too.
Do you think, and it's 100% true. And it goes back. I remember like we saw that in Inscribe Pepe. So like every Discord, they're just like, hey, and like with the Zuki I saw.
Oh yeah, like, dude, on the way down, no doubt. Everybody's always trying to jump off while the plane's going down.
So do you think like our style, like this, certainly like guys like you and I, and like I said, Steven and Chip and Scribe and Postwook and Aaron and all these guys, like there's an honest, authentic core of people, but we're not great for the algorithm. So like, I guess this is more of blue therapy time now. Like if I don't want to talk to someone or ever be totally upfront and honest, then I don't want to do the show anymore. I will, like, if I start peddling someone else's crap, I will burn out in like 3 days. I'll be like,
yes,
I just sold my soul to some crappy product and I don't care. I'm never going to use it. And
life isn't worth living that way.
Yeah. They gave me $10,000, but like,
yeah.
Is there a home for authentic people on the X timeline? I don't know. I struggle with that.
I think there is. And the key word there is authentic. I think if you wake up one day and you're like, oh shit, I haven't posted anything today, I better find something to post, that's not authentic. When you have something spilling out of you that absolutely needs to come out, I think that's all I ever tweet. is like if I'm having some obsessive day with like bit axes and I'm replacing heat
Right.
sinks and I found something I want to share with everybody, I'll write some kind of a thing about it. Or if I've looked into something I feel like a lot of people are not looking into, I'll post about that because I feel like if I had to be a Zoomer about it and say that I've like what's my brand, I would never ask that because I'm a millennial and like there was no such thing as that before
Right.
because we were just like grew up and we skateboarded and stuff. Like we weren't on the internet from the second we were born. So if I had to say what my brand is, it's digging into the corners where I find value and exposing that to the people who are calm enough or patient enough to want to hear it. And the thing that I was thinking while you were saying this, it's like, is there a place for us on the internet? Yeah, it's amongst the people. This is a great filter, I think. It's amongst the people who want to know about something that someone else is passionate about and maybe become passionate about it themselves, which is not everybody. But you wouldn't want everyone watching your show because most people are probably not the target audience. They're not like if everyone's just looking to flip something, they'll find the people who are talking about flipping stuff,
Right.
right? But there are at least a few people, such as me and pretty much all of our friends, and the because we keep adding on to this group of friends too. So it's not
Yeah.
like it's just 8 of us or
And it's
something. There's like
organically growing. It's beautiful.
at least dozens of people who
Right.
I could list off the top of my head who are honestly and genuinely interested in what Bitcoin ordinals can do for Bitcoin, for people, how we can use Bitcoin in the future, how meta protocols play into that, yada, yada, yada. There are tons of people who are really interested in that. And I think that that's our place on Twitter. And if no one is talking about this, everyone's just trying to feed the algorithm and outcompete each other for talking about how to flip and what to flip and who to be mad at when it doesn't work. That's boring. So, like, your voice is necessary because if not you, then who? You know, like this reasonable group of people now have nowhere to consume content or to interact if you're not trying to expose things that you think are really cool.
Yeah, or
So
the burnout
that's
factor
where
for everybody else gets hard. No, and I appreciate it. Maybe it was just after a full week in B25, like so many interviews, so much time meeting so many people, like it's such a fun week, but when you get home
yeah.
you're just like, whoa.
Well, now you got content for the next like 6 months, so you don't have to record anything for a really
Yeah.
long time, right? You
No,
have
but
tons of stuff to put out.
but it's funny for me, like I just like to keep interviewing the next person, but like ones like this, I have this great software called Opus Clip, and it will actually like verticalize and grab the best segments. The only thing I found though is sometimes the AI again is looking for the hooky
Hotspots.
stuff. Well, it's looking for the
Yeah.
hooky stuff,
Yeah, I bet.
and I've already like you've already said like 10 great analogies or quotes. So maybe I just need to go back to the old school of like one a week. And then I literally go through and I hand pick my own quotes because that's where the authenticity is, and that the algorithm and AI is great and it saves me a ton of time by verticalizing everything, but it
Yeah.
doesn't always get what I want because I'm using a machine, and the machine's it's all based on the algorithm. It's quite interesting, the world that you, me, and all of us, I mean, and this is humanity in general, have been thrust in just with all this AI stuff. Like I've been able to streamline. I started a business 20 years ago, and you couldn't really do my business 40 years ago because it was websites and it was like all virtual and I could work from anywhere. But now we can start automating like tasks that people could do with AI. Like it's getting more and more and more, but where does the soul splinter and the
I think I have
authenticity leaves?
two ideas about that. When you overproduce things, not when they're overproduced individually, I mean, when you put out so much content that it's just constantly happening, you get this like local band syndrome and people stop listening because they know it's going to happen again later. In my opinion, anyway, that's what happens to me. If I know that someone is going to be talking once an hour, every hour for 15 minutes, I just am not going to like rush to tune into it. But if it happens once a week at a specific time or once a day at a specific time, and it's all condensed into one like very thoughtful thing, I might actually pay attention to that. Like that would be interesting to me. And I think something that AI can't do is focus on one person's experience because it doesn't have your senses. It doesn't have your sense of smell, touch, sight, discomfort. It doesn't know what you feel when you feel pain. It knows everything we've ever written down because that's what we've fed to it. Maybe videos now, it can digest videos, but it still can't digest anything from within one person's brain. So I think if you're to ask AI to pull what's most like clip worthy, it's going to give you a really great highlights reel of what most people might think was interesting. But what do you think is interesting?
Right.
That's what you can provide, the things you think are interesting, and that will set you apart from everything else because everyone else has access to the same AI stuff.
Right.
So like, it's not that that doesn't provide meaningful content necessarily, but much like when Apple Logic Pro came out, everybody could produce music. There was no friction involved at all, other than just learning Apple Logic Pro, which is super easy. Like a baby can do that. So like now there's tons and tons and tons of music, and most of it is unexceptional. Do you have to like filter through it more to find the exceptional stuff? Or like, I mean, a lot of people would say that's a really good thing. That content, like bounty of content, means diversity of content somehow, and that more will come out that makes more changes occur, or makes statements about more things, or exemplifies the human experience better, or something like that. But I think there is also valid merit to like record companies back in the 70s choosing what they thought was awesome. And I know that's more singular and it's not ideal because like many things that were awesome got passed over because of that. But there has to be a blend somewhere between like everyone can do anything they want all the time and it's all AI assisted. So it's all the same garbage that comes out because it's like monoculture in a way. Like it's all multicultural. It's everything. Instead of it being someone's viewpoint, it's everyone's viewpoint all at the same time, which is kind of like scary and weird and sterile in some way.
It sanitizes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like then when there were like music industry executives who would sit in a room with a cigarette or a cigar in the 1960s and they would decide that like Chuck Berry was the next thing that was going to happen. Well, that was a person's viewpoint. And it was actually like trailblazing. And I don't know if those kinds of musicians making trailblazing music produced the executives or if the executives produced those trailblazing musicians. So I don't really know which one was the cause or which was the effect and how we can get back to something like that. But like something that we're seeing more and more is the homogenization of every single piece of data that's ever occurred into every single moment of time. So what did people dress like in the 70s? Like you remember this, right? No, maybe you don't remember it. You saw it in books. Bell bottoms, long collars, stuff like that. Polyester, maybe.
I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I was born.
But you remember that
in the early 70s, dude. So yeah,
you remember that it happened.
I grew up with it. I mean,
you dressed like
I have way older siblings. No, I was.
And you had a long bowl cut.
Yeah.
Right. You had a long bowl cut at one point.
Oh yeah, we all did.
Yeah, right. But who does now? No one. They all have the same haircut, and it's not that bowl cut. And then in the 80s, everybody dressed the same, but it was distinctly the 80s. And in the 90s, everybody dressed the same, but it was distinctly the 90s. After the year 2000, after the end of like the low-rise Britney Spears jeans thing, there has been no cultural definition. Everyone picks a decade they like the most, and they dress like that, which is really strange because we don't have a definition anymore because we're becoming a singular blob, which is kind of cool. But it's also kind of terrifying, and it's a lack of new cultural identity, I guess.
I guess
I'm
it
still
happens.
Digesting it.
Yeah, no, that's very insightful stuff. So it sounds like you're saying like people gravitate toward like my dad for way longer than he should have used to wear a turtleneck and a sport coat, and I'm sure that was in like 1964.
Keep it up.
He did it through the 80s, and it had the patches on the sleeve. Like, you know, he smoked his pipes. He held on to that thing absolutely forever. And like you said, but that was more like everybody dressed the same, and at some point he just stopped. It's like a lot of people stop evolving in their musical taste. A lot of people who grew up with hard rock in the 60s and 70s, they kind of just stopped there, and they don't keep growing musically. And there's nothing wrong with that.
That's fine.
Yeah,
that's totally fine.
It's just your choice. And I try to always tell people like I have nieces who are still feeding me cutting edge stuff, and some of it I like and some of it I don't, but you know, that's how I got in the King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard. But there's plenty of bands out there that, especially with Spotify, that feeds you that stuff. There's so many niches, and like I'm a down tempo, slow beats per minute. Like I'm so hyper and
chill.
Yeah,
I like chill music too.
Yeah, and chill music can make me focus more. So I'm a very like Air, the French band, like Beta band, like
Air's awesome.
Yeah, so many bands that you've heard of, but a lot of people haven't, but can bring me. It's very Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, like a very low.
Like, I don't mind. I guess I wasn't trying to make fun of people who get stuck in a decade, and I think it's okay to get stuck in a
No, I
decade. I think
took it
it's
as
all part of
positive. It's like you pick your thing
natural
now.
life cycle. You do pick your thing, but also like there isn't a thing, is my point. Like there was a thing. The 20s had like prohibition and flappers, and
Right.
30s were deco, and
Zoot
40s
suits.
was
Yeah.
war,
Right.
50s was like the dawn cars. You remember cars in the 50s? They looked like SpongeBob boats with like goofy fins on them and crazy colors and white stripes, right? You remember that big white wall
Of
tires?
course.
And then in the 60s, you started to have these like American muscle sports cars. In the
Yeah.
70s, you had boats with tuned down engines, but they were massive, like the size of a living room, a boat, right? 80s, you had more economy cars, four speed stick shift Hondas came into style, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
We had an
And in the
80s
90s, we
Honda
went
and they
back to
were
like,
awesome. They like,
yeah, they were incredible, right? But now every car is just a circle. They're all the same crossover circle. They're half hatchback, half SUV, sort of electric, maybe. Like they're all just turning into the same car.
they are
Well,
getting
every
very
car was the
bodied.
same car in the 60s, but they were distinct from the 70s. I would say that starting in maybe like 2010, everything's just a round car that's half electric,
It's almost
right?
because now it's all about efficiency and aerodynamics. And I'm a big fan of the 80s, the square cars. Everything was
I
very,
think it's scarier than that. I think
every,
it's way scarier than efficiency. I think it's
oh,
scarier because it's about sterility. Every car is black, white, gray, silver. Nothing's like neon green. There's no pink cars.
yeah.
There's no weird lines. Nobody makes a statement. There's not a car with a boxy back end. In fact, the first car I've seen do this in a while is the BMW M2. And I think Nissan just reproduced their like Datsun Z line or
Oh,
something.
I
And there's
remember
some
those.
$100,000 like sports coupe that they made. But there's only two cars I can think of that are actually making a statement. But those statements are being made about the 80s, not even about now.
So,
They're not
guys,
even
so you're
making a
saying
new statement.
even cutting edge stuff now is a throwback to an era because, like
Yes.
you said, where none of us are locked in. I've always liked square cars
And
more,
everything else is safe.
the boxy
Sterile. They don't want
cars.
to make a statement because you might offend somebody if you make a statement. So you have to, everybody has to make exactly the same car in order for anyone to buy it because we've gotten in this mindset that like anything that's slightly outside the bounds of comfort is bad. Like kids aren't allowed to just go run around for 10 hours in their neighborhood, right? That's
No,
what I
they're
did when I
not.
was a kid.
And so
You
did
can't do that
I. A
because
lot
why?
of
Because everyone thinks someone's going to kid. Who wants your kid? Nobody wants to hang out with your kid.
well, with all the
You are the only
cameras,
one who
even if
wants to
they
hang out with your
did,
kid.
it's going to be pretty
There's no
tough. Yeah.
chance
I
somebody wants to
actually,
babysit your kid for
yeah,
free.
I moved to a community just like a chill lake community. It's very tightly knit. It's very
Yeah.
well protected. It's got its own police force. It's a good little town, but I wanted them to grow up like you and I did in the 70s and 80s where it was kick the
Yeah.
can and bloody murder and
Go
all
shoot
those.
arrows over the house and try to defend yourself with a garbage can lid. That's fun.
Yeah, but I guess to close this out on the most philosophical
Yeah, I don't know what we're
conversation.
talking about.
No, this is perfect. Do you think that culture, because like I've heard almost like a paradox from you. You're saying like now we all kind of picked our favorite vibe, our favorite generation, and we all dress very differently. Yet there's this other thing going on where our cars are becoming more bubbly, boring, homogenous. Are we, I would argue, my parents grew up in the 50s, like that's when they were in high school. That to me felt like the most homogenous time. And if you were gay or like super into some niche thing, that was kicked right out of you.
Ah,
Like you play football or
okay.
what?
I see where you're
Or,
going.
okay.
Yeah.
So are we
Yeah.
now entering this place where, and obviously right now with, I don't want to say DEI because I don't need to go to every political thing, but
I
like,
see where you're going. Yeah. I feel you.
are we now, and obviously with the Democrats going to office where everything felt like it was like, we must have this forgiveness of everybody, which I totally agree with, live and
Yeah.
let live. But now, with Trump in office, it's more like, break shit and whatever. And more like, are we going to a more sterile, homogenous culture, or are we both at the same time, in some ways going more groupthink, sterile, homogenous, and in some ways we're dressing and being whoever we want because there's no appointment TV with Seinfeld or Friends or whatever? Like, where are we going?
I hope that we're going to a place where no, I don't know. I don't really hope anything, actually. I think that the dawn of the internet put everything in a blender and made it so that nothing can be geographically or temporally unique. It's not where it is. Everything is everywhere and every time, all the time, which is a scary thing for me because I think it's important that we explore things thoroughly and fully. And yeah, it's cool. The 50s, the cars were cool. The dawn of the suburbs can buzz off. I think suburbs were a big mistake in a lot of ways. No, not like in most ways, I would say. The fact that they're there, we got to live in them, whatever. That's a different conversation. And yeah, fervent racism and anti-gay stuff, not cool. Like we don't like that. We moved on from it. But the 50s had a definition. There was a time when people did a thing and it was like defined by a few cultural items. Growing doesn't mean that we have to all become the same person and be afraid to make any statements at all, which is, I think, where we are currently. And when I say sterile, I mean to say that very few people have a car that's a color. Very few people dress outside the bounds of either some other predefined decade that they've chosen or whatever's on the racks at H&M. Like there's not a lot of statement in clothing anymore. If you watch people get off a bus or out of cars or walk around a grocery store, it's difficult to tell them apart or even tell what year they're living in. You know, I don't know if that's good or bad. I just think it's worth stating that like we're even in a place where we can't define what a woman is. And I don't know if we should be able to define that. I'm just saying it was very clear for most of human history what a woman is. And all of a sudden, this decade, we have no idea what bathrooms people are supposed to go in.
Right.
It's a strange turning point where everything got so put in a blender that we don't know where we are or who we are at all. Maybe that's good. Maybe it's a really big point of growth that we need to have to get to wherever we're about to be. And it's cool that we got away from this like very regionally specific, very like insular thinking, like in the 50s, like you said, where everybody was like, you're gay, go to camp. It'll get out of you. Don't worry, kid.
Right.
We'll get you straight, you know?
Right.
Like,
go talk to a priest. There's whole That's programs. Cool. Right. 100%.
But maybe it's important that we had that decade so that we can grow away from it. But if we don't have a definition now, what do we grow away from and towards? I don't know. So I can't say where we're going. I can just say that this feels very scared and sterile, and people are afraid to say anything because it might be wrong. I don't like that. I want people to say shit that's wrong and then learn from it.
Right.
And then grow forward.
Well, and be forgiven for that and not canceled forever, you know? And then you get these celebrities who have always been horrible people get canceled, and then they wait 3 months, do their forgiveness tour, and everyone's like, oh, he's so good in that sitcom, you know?
You could probably cut this into something that would get me canceled. The only difference is that I don't care because I'm just exploring and I'm willing to be wrong and then consider myself right when I figure out why I was wrong. You know, like I don't think you can cancel someone who's exploring.
I think the cancel culture thing, I think, at least in my opinion, I'm in the same boat. Like I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and I'm live and let live. I think everybody should be able to express themselves however they want and interpret it that however you may. But I think the culture, I felt like everything was pushing down and like into groupthink. And I feel like, I mean, I'm going to say it with this recent election, that just kind of blew up. Now it may get negative or weird in another way, and maybe that grip will, and then, you know, we knock that out again. And maybe that's why you need these two ridiculous kind of pseudo parties now. Like it's like,
balance,
right?
Yeah, the pendulum, it swings, right? It goes back and forth,
right? But let's be honest, like we need a party that's fiscally conservative and socially liberal. Like 98% of us are, but
I don't think we get them. I don't think we get it, man.
I don't think we do.
I think we always get half of one and the other half of the other, and then they bounce back and forth, and that's the only thing that keeps us in check and never falling too far to one side, to the point where this becomes like a dictatorship where we're putting people on trains and entering them into camps, or which I don't know if we're doing that now or not.
No, but it's terrifying because obviously you see bad stuff going on all over the world. So to finish off, like obviously, you know, there's mainstream. You and I were at this Bitcoin conference. We were in Vegas. Obviously, you and I have been in this space. It's a very new space, but we've been in Ordinals for whatever, 2.5, 3 years, however old it is. We were in Ethereum and in that world before that, and we see how it's getting more corporate. It's using the UI, UX, and wallets and stuff to cross over to the mainstream, but to make seed phrases and everything invisible. Are we like the zeitgeist of this whole new cultural movement, or is everything, and when I say we, like us, the ETH guys, like this cultural thing, like is crypto, maybe even throw AI in there, is there like, are we kind of bleeding edgers of this space? Is this the zeitgeist? Like you said, everything's international now. You and I have friends from all over the world. Like, when I'm retired, I could plan a trip probably around the world 3 times and see different people you and I have met in this space and have probably the best time ever. And I probably will do that. Is this the zeitgeist of where the future going? These like Balaji, like online communities, and then maybe trying to even find some hubs or towns or countries where we all live and go? Or are we so fragmented now, there is no zeitgeist anymore, and that's the point. Like there's all these different pots being stirred, and we all somehow in the internet get blended together to make an even weirder, messier, more, Picasso-like canvas.
I wonder, okay, 2 things maybe. One of them is that definitely Casey's foray into ordinals, building the ordinals protocol, was the singular onboarding mechanism for thousands of new Bitcoiners, thousands of new full nodes, thousands of people familiar with and capable of self-custody and interacting directly with the Bitcoin network from their own server. That did happen. And I think because of that boom, that economic boom or the social boom, a lot of layer 2s came out of that. And a lot of businesses that ended up being like, I don't know, potentially integral to the scaling of those things, if that is a thing you believe in, scaling. ETFs didn't do that. ETFs raised people's awareness of BTC, the fact that it exists, but not anything to do with it. There's no layer 1 activity. There's no learning about self-custody. Nobody knows anything about the network or mining. They just see Bitcoin go up.
Right.
They buy Bitcoin from someone else, and they're interacting in what may be considered a detrimental way, a custodial way with the network. So I think that who's around and outside of that was a part of a new version of Bitcoin, a new boom of Bitcoiners that will change its course somehow. As for what we're going to do with this non-geographic world we're living in, when our friends are all like, we're confined by geography physically, right, but we're not confined by geography in any other way. Like, so all of our friends are not near us. This creates a really strange dynamic. And I wonder if there will be, all right, if governments live off of fiat currencies and taxable locales, and all fiat currencies, if you subscribe to this, are going to zero and are short-term boom things. And the only thing that is not a short-term boom and may have long-term value over X time period, whether it's 10, 100,000 years, is Bitcoin, then it would kind of only make sense that a network state would develop under Bitcoin. Like this, maybe this is idiotic and won't matter because we'll all be dead by the time it happens. But what if there is like a world where essentially UBI exists and it's just owning Bitcoin, and any amount of Bitcoin you own, since it's like always capable of purchasing more than the years prior.
Right.
What if that's just like, what if we don't need governments anymore? Everything becomes privatized entirely and is all locale driven based on wherever you choose to live. I don't know. I think there's a lot of really big paradigm shifts coming up. And who could possibly predict what it's going to look like?
Yeah.
I don't think any civilization that has crumbled or changed to the degree that, like, we see in ruins at the moment, like from thousands of years ago.
Right.
I don't think any of them could be like, here's probably what's going to go wrong with us, and here's how we're going to fix it, or here's what we're going to look like in 200 years. I don't think that's possible.
No, you always have a myopic blind spot. No, that's I don't know. I just totally. Like this conversation, it spurred that question, so I wanted to go there. I'd really have to think about it. I do think, you talk about the network state, like from Balaji, like, I don't know if it's El Salvador, but then, he kind of like puts Bitcoin on there, but then he does another deal with the IMF, which means they probably twisted his arm behind the scenes. So like the strength of the country and the sovereign is still super strong now, but we all know, like, the Dutch and the East India Company, like they had their run as the top dog, and so did Genghis Khan, and so did the British Empire, right? So, our dollar, whether it's 4 years from now or 400 years from now, it can't not deflate and inflate to zero. It's just a matter of how they do it, I guess, unless they literally go on Bitcoin as a currency. So,
well, maybe
it's so hard to predict.
Maybe I hadn't really thought about this much before, so this is probably really juvenile stuff that someone in the audience is going to be screaming at me for saying, but like land has been important traditionally because land contains resources. But the further away from needing resources we get, the further away from land being important we will get. And the further away from that we get, the less important governments are. Because governments are to protect the people that live on top of the resources or live within the country that has gathered the most resources, right? Like that's
and scarce resources,
kind of the whole point of it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So like I don't know how that energy dynamic will change with Bitcoin because resources I don't know, man. This is such a complicated topic. I have no idea. I could overthink this for years and never come up with the right
we can always
because I'm missing most of
that.
it.
Yeah, no, and I think this is probably a good place to stop. Like I could go on for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, but I
can talk about nothing all day, man. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not nothing though. Like to me, this is the interesting stuff. It's going deeper. It's talking about the culture of Bitcoin and all the cause and effects that are there. And are we going to sit here and solve every problem? No, but it's fun to speculate what it could look like. And it's fun to talk about like right now. I mean, if you think about it, we are in the X algorithm birdcage. Like when you and I, it's very untraditional, but when you and I wake up and we sign into work, like X only wants to be more of an everything thing to you, TV, audio, video, whatever. Like it's a very unique what we're speed running so many different things is we're speed running what a virtual community looks like. But I think you nailed it at the beginning. When we all see each other, it's just like a shake of a hand, a hug, or just like, hey, like good to see you, Donny, because nothing like these screens are great and we have high resolution here and I can look at I can look at the subtleties of how you express yourself, but there's nothing that takes place of in person. And I think at some point we all want that place, even if it's somewhere we live part of the year where we can go. Cause these conferences are fun. Like you said, I'm not a big drinker anymore. I like to pace myself and I like to really enjoy it. I don't need alcohol anymore to have a good time. I know it sounds like a cheesy 80s billboard, but like, I'm animated enough as it is. Like I'm just fine. And I just love, like, if I don't drink, that means I can stay out later and I can hang out more and have more conversations and recharge get up earlier, recharge the next day and do it all over again. Totally. But obviously as we get older, that conference pace is very high. It's very frantic. When we get home, we sleep a lot with great memories. Yeah. But what if there was a place where it was like, all of us for 2 months, it wasn't this frantic thing. Be like, hey, Donny, want to go out to dinner tomorrow night? I got a group. And you're like, oh no, I'm going to go out here and then I'm going to go to bed early. Like we actually just live like we're on vacation or even like a summer home. And then the idea is like, in Nashville, I think is doing that with Bitcoin stuff, but really nothing yet in our little Ordinals culture. There's certainly the KC Aaron group in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, Northern California, LA, I think's got a really big artist and kind of DJ contingency. But dude,
maybe it's important that we have these though. Maybe it's important that we have these geographic subgroups, these like microcosms, because different ideas emerge out of different experiences or different environments. So like maybe it's really important that we're not around everybody all the time, because that would just be even more monoculture.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe it's cool to have these like fireworks shows 5 times a year.
Yeah, because that's a very good point, because there's a huge New York community, obviously, and those guys, as you know, are way different vibe than the Northern California, who are way different than the Southern California. I'm in the middle of the country.
True.
I've already told people I'm in Illinois, and there's very few of us even in this whole area. I'm sure I could really dig and find more, but until I resonate with someone, like, it doesn't matter. And most of them are on the coasts, and then there's Canada, Europe, and the rest of the world. So maybe you're right. Maybe it is, we need to live our lives and come together. But I guess the only thing I would say to you is like, and I don't want to speak for you, but for me, like, I'm active in my community. I play golf with some guys. I used to play softball for years. I was on the board of my town and I was the police commissioner, and I enjoy doing that stuff. I enjoy giving back and I enjoy being a part of community with my kids. But the further on I go, the more like an invisible window has rolled up because this is where my passion is. This is where my philosophical mind goes. This is where thinkers like you and traders and degens and coders and artists, we all come together to form this virtual community. The more I'm with like normie friends, I'm not going to lie to you, like the more I feel disconnected from them. And I don't know if that's happening to you. And it's not everybody. I have my connections here, but it just, when I go to these Ordinals conferences, I'm like, exhale, like there you guys are, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I live in a different world entirely. Yeah.
Right.
Like even just talking to my parents, they have to listen to me rant about this stuff all the time. I don't know if they like it or don't, but I'm not like I stopped going to family reunions probably 15 years ago because I just didn't feel like I was like them. And I hate to even say that because it feels limiting. Like it feels like a limiting perspective for me to have to like get in a group of what I'd consider to be normal people from suburbs who work normal
Sure.
jobs, and then me feel like I'm different than them. I don't feel like I'm better. I feel like I have nothing in common with them. And this rolls directly off of something I was going to respond to that you said. I think you said something about like East Coasters and West Coasters having different vibes entirely. I think that any dense metropolitan area still has mimetic value because there are distinct differences in weather patterns or local governments, even the color of fire hydrants or something like all these weird passive details that you're taking in metropolitan areas combined with a diverse population of black, white, brown, Asian, whatever from everywhere. Everyone's all over the place in these areas and it yields a different outcome. Like the input is always directly related to the output or the output's related to the input. I think when you go further away from city centers and into suburbs, you get a more homogenous culture. So I would, if anything, I would say that in general, suburbs are homogenous across the entire United States. Like they're all just the same suburb kind of. But once you get into dense city centers where people are regularly interacting with any other person, like anybody who's a little different from them, and they have to, that's where new ideas and new I guess cultural definitions come into play. Like if you go to Boston, Boston people are really different from Philadelphia people, are
Oh
different from
yeah.
Pittsburgh people, are different from New York people. But the suburbanites from those places are really not all that different from each other. You know,
That's actually really
some
good. No,
strange.
that's a good
I don't know
point.
how that plays into anything, but I've been noticing that for a long time. That every time I go to like my dentist office in this Buffalo suburb, I'm like, this looks like suburban St. Louis. It's the
100%.
same place. It's not even a little different. The roads are just organized differently. The houses look the same. The people dress the same. They have the same political views, you know, but there's like, but that doesn't exist in city centers. So it might be a huge disservice or a new kind of place if we made this like Bitcoin network state. I don't know how the hell we would do it or how we would buy land and with whose money or what it would just turn into
Yeah.
another government anyway. But
You wouldn't want it to
that might
certainly
produce a
be
new culture.
homogenous. I think the one place I would push back, and that the suburban analogy is great, and the inner and the big city one is, I would argue that one thing that America kind of messed up in, and it probably was because of cars and oil and Rockefeller and all that, but we didn't create enough really good mid-size walking cities. Like even Paris, which is a huge city, is a great walking city because everything's local. You know, in Europe, you buy your food 1 or 2 days at a time because when you rode your bicycle or even drove home, the little market where you know the people intimately are right, like they're literally 3 doors down from you. You know, the suburbs kind of ruin that. Like for the good news is I'm way out in the suburbs here. So I'm like 40 or 50 miles out. So like, it's great because tons of land, tons of farms out here. There's tons of lakes out here.
Yeah, that's not even a suburb.
But
that's
yeah,
rural.
It's an exoburb, but because it still is, it's still good schools. Sure. It's still like that. It's kind of the best and worst of both worlds. But if I want to go get something, like whether, you know, I'm gonna have to drive regardless of what it is, it's at least 10 to 15 minutes, like to a Home Depot this way or a Chipotle that way. Like, and there, you know, I can't just walk there and get the loaf of bread and the sushi or whatever.
Right.
And that's a big difference.
And that defines like the way people interact with their surroundings. It does come out in everything else they choose to do because they're accustomed to this one pattern of action. Potentially, I've only lived in downtown Buffalo, downtown Rochester, and Brooklyn, New York, until I moved. So all like major city centers within New York State. Until a year and a half, I moved to Puerto Rico, and I lived downtown in San Juan, like right in the center of the city. And it has completely changed the way that I view the world. Not because I have learned something about humanity, but because the people around me move differently. Things
Oh
are
yeah.
painted different colors. The angles on buildings are different. The weather is different. You know what I mean?
The
I've,
whole
I've never
vibe's different.
not had
I've
a
been to
car in my
San
life,
Juan. I went
but I don't need
like,
it.
yeah, I went like 13 years in a row for like a week at a time for our big conferences for MTV. We're down there back in the
Oh, cool.
90s. Yeah, it was super fun. The Blue Parrot, we used to always go there. But no, San Juan is a beautiful place. But it also, when you have that hot weather, everyone moves like, especially when it's hot, they move
Molasses. Yeah.
deliberately slow. But it's very, it's boiling, but it's also very meditatively slow. It's max conserving energy up in the north, what you're used to, that I'm used to. In the winter we move very fast, and then in the
Everybody's
spring
vibrating.
we're still moving fast, and then we finally realize once it's warm, we're like, A, why do we live in this cold weather? And B, once it warms up, we like, then all of a sudden we become Midwestern nice again, and we talk to all our neighbors, and we have our
Right, right.
barbecues, and we're like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
we need this weather. That's, it's just like the sun is out, like I'm happy again.
It's the way people live and the surroundings that they live in affects dramatically the way that they behave and think. And I don't know, like I'm still pondering that question, like where are we going? What are the new states going to look like? Should there be a new state? Should we all move to the same city? It's a lot to think about. I'll
Yeah.
have to keep kicking it around in my head. I keep thinking I should like buy a building in San Juan and then like get a co-work, co-business, like a little
Oh,
mall sort of thing. But I don't have any money. But like if I did, it might be worth trying to like host for free, like put up, I don't know how it would happen. Maybe it could be like a brand sponsored joint, which I know some people hate, but it's necessary in a lot of ways, where there's like free Airbnbs for holders of certain ordinals groups. And there's like activities, like kind of like a summer camp for adults. My girlfriend and I were talking about this the other day, that we just stopped playing as adults. Like, why don't we have summer camp? Why can't we do that? If we're all working from home, why don't we have a 1 week or 5 week stay away summer camps? Like there should be something like that. And it's
100%.
not a fully formed idea. I just
Yeah.
keep thinking.
No, I like it. And just because you don't have money doesn't mean, the beauty of our space is there's someone who's a pretty authentic person who might hear this and be like, that's actually a really good idea. Cause you're right. Like I was the youngest. I had a ton of sleepovers as a kid. I loved it because sleepovers are it's kind of like going to a conference. Like you bond with them, you go to sleep, you wake up with them. I love chatting way late in the night, kind of like, you and I are doing right now. And to me, adults
Yeah.
kind of like turn into adults. Like with my kids, they're like, Dad, you look like, we had kids way later than most. So most of the parents are like 10 years younger than us, our kids' age. And my daughter's like, Dad, you look as good or younger than them. I'm like, yeah, because I never, like, I'm
Because
an
I'm a
adult
kid.
and I'm a responsible, but I never stopped being a kid, and I never stopped being
Yeah.
curious. And I tell them, they're like, what should I do when I grow up? I'm like, just be curious and just follow the things that you're interested in. The doors will open if you go where so many of my kids' friends are like, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer. Like that stuff still happens, especially in the burbs. Like it's a joke, like be what you're curious about. Like if you want to be an actor, great, because yeah, maybe the odds are higher to make it as an actor, but you know what? Like I was a comedian in my 20s, and after like 10 years, I kind of weeded myself out because I'm like, I didn't want to take the gamble to get, first I had to make it onto the Second City main stage to get my bid to go to Second City or to Saturday Night Live. And I was
Right.
like, am I one of the funniest three guys among 10,000 in Chicago? I'm probably top 10%, but I didn't think I was top three guys, and I weeded myself out. Well, had I waited and stuck with it, YouTube came out. All these tools came out where I could have gotten my own crew, written my own skits, done whatever I want. But that happened right after I got out, and I got the big promotion at work, and I just went that direction. I don't regret it because
Yeah.
now I have this space to kind of like be creative and emote in and, present it, inscribing and stuff like that. But like, you never know what's going to open up job wise or just curiosity wise, because the tools are always evolving to meet the creativity of our souls.
Oh, preach, dude. You never know what the solution to your problem you don't yet have is, because the solutions are not going to be the same by the time you get there. Like when people worry about Bitcoin tail emissions, they're like, how are we going to pay the security budget in 100 years? And I'm like, you don't know what's going to happen in 5 years, let alone 100? Why would you be planning a solution for a problem that doesn't exist yet? It's like it's an absurd thing to do, but everybody does it when they're a kid because people ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the kid says, like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a firefighter.
Right.
Almost no one follows that. There are a few people who say doctor and then they end up a doctor. But by and large, you just end up being whatever you're drawn to. I think that's perfectly fine. You don't have to pick a career for the rest of your life when you're 6.
No, but I think most
know?
people fight that though. A lot of people are influenced by, kind of what their parents want, what society wants. I think a lot of people, like what percentage of people do you think that are working are happy with their jobs? I would say
most people working can't wait to stop.
Right. They're working for retirement,
Yeah.
whereas you and I pulled ourselves a little bit out of the matrix, or a lot of bit out of the matrix. I did it 17, 18 years ago. My corporate life was at MTV back when it was kind of fun and cool until it got too corporate. And then I was like, I'm out.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. Thank you for your service.
MTV was awesome when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And Nickelodeon and VH1, we had all those networks. And, but once I started my own company, it took years when you're unplugged from that matrix of like, I was always comparing myself like, well, she makes more money than me. He might like, it was so, and then once you get out of it, you're like, oh my God, now I can start living and creating and focusing on the ideas that I want to focus on. And, the beauty of having a company where we build things for people, marketing and apps and tech, like I've heard so many ideas, I can very quickly be like, it's something I'm interested in, something I'm not interested in, or it's something I'm interested in. And I think this one has legs, you know what I mean? Like it becomes a skill, but it's also a skill just to balance your life with what you do and your curiosity. If you can combine all of those, like if my kids could do that, then, as a parent, like I've succeeded, even though they're their own souls, but I would be like,
and we treat it like
I'm
it's
happy.
Static. It's in motion all the time. I don't know. I've been 10 different things. I was a Subway sandwich artist for a while. I was a butcher at the top supermarket butcher block. I was a barback and a bartender and a beverage director and a bar manager. And then I moved into whatever the hell it is I'm doing now. And I'm 40 and I've chased a bunch of different passions down. And like, you can say making sandwiches is stupid and menial. I had a lot of fun making sandwiches. I think you can make a really good sandwich. I actually have super strong opinions about how sandwiches ought to be made.
100%.
And I might open a sandwich shop in 5 years just because I keep on biting. When you buy a sandwich and you take a bite, it's just bread. And then the next bite's just a ball of turkey. And then the next bite is all lettuce. And you're like, how did you screw this up? It's a sandwich. It's a layered food. It's
Dude,
really
that's like
easy to
Chipotle.
layer.
You're like,
food.
I'd like rice.
Oh God, don't give me a bite
beans,
that's all rice.
And you say you want rice, they pour all rice. I almost want to caveat, be like, there's going to be 6 things I want. So I want 1/6 rice. I want 1/11
90% rice.
sauce
Let's get this right.
on the top. But like they always just dump it, with that stuff.
There's a way to do anything passionately and stand out doing it. If you are passionate about making sandwiches, then you ought to make sandwiches for a living until you hate sandwiches and you love something else, and then go do that.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything wrong with just feeling it out.
Yeah, when I first started my company 17 years ago, I really loved video editing because I did it for my family. I made little skits. I did it for fun. So I was like, oh, I'll do it. The web is new. Video on the web was just getting there. We were getting past dial-ups. So I was very on the forefront of that. I started editing videos for different companies, and I realized within 3 months, I'm like, I like doing it for me for fun, but I don't like doing it. They're like, it's too blue. This decision you made is dumb. I'm like, no, this decision I made is perfect. And here's why. And I'm like, oh, wait.
That's me.
Right. Because I did this. And I'm like, oh, I need to do, sometimes they're passions just for you. And sometimes they're passions that can turn into a job. And I realized, so I went one step up. I had people make the videos. I was the relationship guy. I was kind of crafting the whole thing. And that's kind of what I did at MTV. Anyway, I was like, oh, that's kind of where I was meant to be. Now I'm just doing it for myself. I'm more of a creative conductor than the guy who rolls up his sleeve and does it, unless it's for me, just doing it for me or my family or my kids or whatever. And that was an important thing for me to learn.
I don't think there's any right path. There's no right path. It's gotten more confusing than ever because people see, like, growing up as a Zoomer or an alpha, I feel like all you do is see highlights reels of other people fucking around and like putting Home Depot buckets on people's heads at doors and pretending that someone is famous and bothering them in public and posting videos. Like all you see is people getting attention for doing outlandish shit. Like that's how Jake Paul and Logan Paul, like they're the best examples. Or is that
Yeah.
those are their names, right?
No,
Those are the best
there's
examples
just
of
so
just
many of them. Yeah, those two. Yeah.
yeah, there's tons of them now, but they kind of like started that. They were original users or content creators on like some of the first platforms to make this kind of thing popular. And they did it, and a lot of people idolized that. Where like before you might, I don't know, when I was a kid, like I had a friend who was making leather watch straps, and like I would see my friends with his leather watch straps on, and I'd be like, man, I wish I would have thought of that. I look up to that guy because he's making things other people want.
Right.
The way that we see production and creation right now is a very like entertainment driven thing. It's not like you want to become the best bartender or the best chef or the best nurse or doctor. You want to become the most popular shit poster. It's like it's got to be a really confusing time to grow up and
Yeah.
like what are your options?
And it's very
Kind of. Like, do you even
shallow.
want a job? I don't know.
Yeah, and I will tell you that there is hope. Like my son and daughter, like they're not like they use social media, but they're not even remotely hooked into it. Like my son's learning high level math. My daughter is like
Sick.
into theater. So this younger generation, they're savvier than you think. It's harder for them to get away from those algorithms, but they they all do, I will say, do it in their own way. And maybe they're more anomalies. They went to a school that was very go outside in 0 degree weather, very hands-on. It was called Waldorf when they were kids. So
Oh yeah,
that
I know Waldorf
oh,
schools.
okay,
Totally.
yeah. So that was very helpful to them. But then they went to public school, and that is way more screens. Like everyone gets an iPad, and my company
Yeah.
my company makes iPad apps for a living. We made some of the first ones back in 2008 2009, and I'm like, get these things out of the classrooms for discussion and socialization and discovery. Like these iPads are just idiot boxes, and
Yeah.
there's some positive things to them, but for the most part, like
It's equal. It's equal up and down, right? Just like everything else. The car, people get hit by cars, they cause pollution, but now we're able to go wherever we want, whenever we want. Those are all like,
right.
that's a blend of exactly probably 50-50 good and bad. Maybe it's better than it is bad. Knives, guns, all that stuff. They enable things, but they also cripple us somehow. I think, or Web 2, I guess, would be the answer to this, the interactive web thing, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, those types of things. They have like hacked into some monkey brain of ours that just can't stop ourselves from like fighting with people or being really obsessed with the number of people who've liked something we've done, even if it's an inaccurate representation of who we are, what we're capable of. I don't think it's all bad. I think there's a lot of good to come from this. I mean, you can propose a solution to like. Do you remember when everybody's Hyundais and Kias were being stolen
Mm-hmm.
because like there was an exploit in the ignition that didn't like turn it off, and you could just like USB drive yourself into the car.
Right.
The solution was out on TikTok almost as quickly as the problem. So like the problem was perpetuated on TikTok because everybody was like, "Yo, check this out! You can steal any Hyundai with this." Boom. 6 months of Hyundais being stolen everywhere. Everyone I've ever dated, everyone I've ever met, their Hyundai got stolen. It was crazy.
Oh, wow.
But the solution was up just as quickly. So people, it was becoming viral that the solution existed just as quickly following the problem. I think that's really cool because there are other things that we'll be able to quickly pass solutions around to, just as much as we can fabricate problems and pass those around. So I'm not against it. I just think it's something that is a new dynamic that we really haven't seen the end of yet. We haven't like passed it far enough in history to look back and go, oh, that's what we were screwing up. Okay, let's not do that next time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's cut it here. I could talk forever to you. Is there anything before we go on that you want to leave people with, or any final thoughts? So we've covered the gamut. I think we haven't solved all the world's problems, but I do feel like we did our job of pushing that rock a little further up the hill. You know what I mean? And to me, that's all it is. It's conversation and it's ideas.
Yeah. The advice I have is do whatever you want. I don't know. That's the only advice I can ever come up with is just do whatever you want to do. Don't listen to other people who tell you what to do, because you have to learn it yourself, I think. I have friends who are like, don't gamble on shitcoins because you will not make more money than you will on Bitcoin. And I go, don't tell people that because they have to get burned first to learn where they want to be. And I think that if you're buying things that other people tell you to buy, then you might get stuck with something you don't want. That sucks. So if you're only ever buying things, and this is a very myopic version,
Right.
but you're only buying things you want, you're really never stuck with it. So there you go.
I love that final thought. So Donny, thank you for coming on. Donny Clutterbuck, everybody. I didn't even announce his title, COO of Emojis, but
I'm
just
not. It's a joke title anyway.
I
It's
know,
whatever.
but just awesome person in the space, and I love how deep you think on this stuff, because you're like me and like a lot of us who've kind of found these friendships in space, like let's go there, because whether we're the zeitgeist of kind of these future digital or digital nomad movements, like someone's got to be talking about it and thinking about it, because I do believe that like if you follow kind of your passions, like you said, and follow your curiosities, like I think a lot of the world will open up and follow to what our thoughts are. People think we react to this hard concrete world, but I think it's more us imagining the world that we have for good and bad. Maybe it's a 50-50, but it's certainly our influence, and how we express ourselves and how we react to things is determining the future of this planet. And that's important.
We're all a piece of it.
We are. So Donnie, thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Until next time, what a fun interview this was.
Thank you, Blue.